Shaboom, shaboom. Welcome back to Shaboom. I am Rick K. Jones, your host on the podcast all about and for baby boomers. We've had a lot of serious discussions recently, so today we're going to have some fun. So fun is the word of the week. And I can tell you this, our generation really has had a lot of fun. We grew up largely in the 1950s and early 1960s when the middle class was in vogue. Remember the middle class? There's not many of that left today, it doesn't seem, which is unfortunate and a subject for another day. But, I guess we were sort of poor, but we didn't have any idea that we were poor. We were middle class. We had clean clothes, we had good food, we had friends, we had church, we had athletics, we had everything. Our generation, our fun was without smartphones. We didn't have any electronic gadgets beyond the transistor radio, which we had in the 1950s. We didn't have any social media. We didn't have the internet. We drank water from a hose. Didn't kill us. We rode bikes everywhere. We ate pretty much anything we wanted without gaining any weight. We played kick the can. We had picnics. We built forts. And we just rode around in our used cars. The music was pretty good, too. A lot of fun music. The origins of rock and roll. We had beach music, R&B, classic country music, and so much more. I decided today to play some really fun tunes on our playlist. The song of the week is a song by the Beach Boys called Good Vibrations. The Beach Boys were a band who wrote and recorded a lot of songs about fun, like another song that's on the playlist called Fun, Fun, Fun. They also wrote about surfing. They wrote about cars, all from a Southern California beach perspective. Other fun songs on our playlist today are Good Times by Chic. Remember that disco song? Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder. September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. I Want to Dance with Somebody from the great Whitney Houston. There's a great song by Bobby McFerrin called Don't Worry, Be Happy. And finally, got to have a little beach music at a beach band from Atlanta, Georgia called the Tams. They recorded a great song called Be Young, Be Foolish, Be Happy. And those are our playlist today, all great songs. My special guest knows a whole lot about creating and having fun for people of all ages. Jason Blain spent a great deal of his career at Herschend Family Entertainment. That's the owner-operator of a lot of theme parks, places like Dollywood, Callaway Gardens, and others. He now runs his own agency with Herschend as one of his clients, and he's got a lot of other clients that are in what we call the fun entertainment business. So let's welcome Jason to Shaboom. Jason, thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. It's good to see you, Rick.
Well, we start every interview with the same two questions. Where'd you grow up, and who, as a child, really influenced you?
Yeah. So I'm a Southern California boy. Grew up in Newport Beach, California. But if there's such thing as the other side of the tracks, I was a little bit on the other side of the tracks there. My dad was a Lutheran pastor. So grew up in a parsonage of all things, and had two brothers, one older, one younger, and then a younger sister. And my mom was a lay worker in the church. So my dad was obviously the most influential figure in my life, certainly the most influential male figure. But he passed away at a young age, and the way I always describe it is I grew up a pastor's kid, but my mom's younger brother ran the front gate at Disneyland. So as a young boy, I got to get on the bus and go up Harbor Boulevard with a fistful of Disney tickets, and from a very, very early age, I was fascinated with the Disney organization and with theme parks in general. So That's a little bit of the youth story.
Well,
It was a
that's
great
wild that
great childhood.
you had that exposure. So, what was your first job?
Oh gosh, my very first job was working at a thrifty drug and discount store. I was a junior clerk, and then all duties assigned with that. But started working from a very young age, and of course, I don't remember back then what the youth labor laws were, but I had a paper route as a kid, and then grew into jobs. And because I grew up in a single parent home predominantly, from a very early age, we were kind of just expected to carry our weight, and so, but that was great for work ethic, and that was a part of my I would say my work story.
Well, your love of theme parks ultimately led you to Hershey, didn't it? Talk about that a little bit.
So, it was an interesting kind of a journey. Like all kids, I graduated high school. Had all my friend group were going on to colleges, great universities, ranging from Harvard to USC to Stanford. I hadn't really thought much about college coming out of high school, so I did a year of junior college, and the junior college system in Southern California is fantastic.
Yeah, it really
Uh,
is.
Went to a school called Orange Coast Community College, did a year there, got my grades turned around and my applications in, and ended up attending Pepperdine University, and loved that school. Got a general business degree, graduated, and still had really no idea specifically what I wanted to do. I had thought about the theme park business, but I just really wasn't ready for that. So I applied to graduate schools. At that point in my life, I was kind of ready to try something different other than Southern California. So I ultimately got accepted to Wake Forest University to get my MBA, but they asked if I would work for a couple years before I came back. So I got two sales jobs, one initially in the consumer products industry, and then in the chemical industry, believe it or not, working for Ashland Chemical. And did those 2 years, went back to Wake Forest to get my MBA. And it was really the summer between the 2 years of my MBA program that I committed to go into the theme park business. My uncle at that point in time, who had been a Disney executive, now had formed kind of a worldwide consulting agency that did a lot of work in the attractions business around the world. We're kind of exporting theme parks to the world. This would have been in the mid '80s. And then I went to work on an internship that summer down at Epcot Center. And then my second year of the MBA program, did a thesis project with who ultimately was the CEO of Universal Studios Florida, a guy named Mike Bartlett. And I worked for Mike for that year, my second year of grad school. And we put together a business plan for a kids entertainment center that he was going to franchise across the country. So once I finished that, I knew I was going to be in that business, and spent the first couple of years working in California for my uncle's consulting company. Ultimately opened an office for them in Orlando. And then it was in Orlando I formed a company, Entertainment Properties, which was my own consulting company, and during that time ended up getting recruited by Hershey, which my wife wasn't entirely thrilled about because they were headquartered at the time in Branson, Missouri, and she was a Southern gal. So, but it was a great opportunity. They recruited me to head up their development group. So at the time, that included all of their team that were designers and writers and engineers and architects that were adding new attractions to their portfolio of theme parks. And then ultimately, it became sort of an M&A business development position, and did that for roughly 12 years. And then it was at that point I transitioned into the partnership area, which is kind of what I've been in ever since. So,
Talk about Hershey a little bit. A lot of people don't know them, but they know their properties,
yeah.
places like Dollywood and others.
Yeah, so one of the things that I was fortunate to do really early on in my career with my uncle's consulting company was a worldwide study on theme parks, and so I looked both domestically and internationally. Looked at big parks, small parks, and one of the groups that was a little bit legendary in this country was this Herschend family, and at the time, the name of the company was called the Silver Dollar City Corporation. That was their original theme park in the Ozark Mountains in Branson. The family was famous for their humility, was famous for their Christian values and ethics. And they were a kind of a slow growth company, and one of those kind of old fashioned companies that, kind of would breathe in the same air as Sam Walton, down the road at Walmart and in Bentonville, and Johnny Morris, who, with Bass Pro Shops, who was there in Springfield. And, the experience with them was, I mean, it really has defined my career. Not only was I, fortunate enough to do a number of different positions, I really got to watch how they cared for their people, how they cared for their customers. And fast forward to today, they are the largest family-owned entertainment company in the world. Uh, they've recently gone through a major acquisition, bringing on an additional 20 parks with the Palace Entertainment Group. So I think they're sitting on somewhere in the 40 to 50 attractions across the country, ranging from theme parks and water parks to aquariums. The Harlem Globetrotters is one of their businesses, and they approach everything from really sort of a family guest experience, kind of wholesome family entertainment perspective, and they treat their constituencies the right way. So they
Yeah,
they were
I think when you work for organizations that have great culture, you see what great culture is. You see how to develop great culture. Um, and I would think in the theme park business, you're selling fun and you're selling, in many cases, family fun. Um, eh, Taking care of the people that are taking care of the customer is paramount, I would think.
It is, and I remember when I was working for that group of Disney guys, that Disney was famous for, really researching and measuring everything. And one of the things that they did very, very early on is they did their annual guest satisfaction scores. And 100% of the time over the years, when they would ask their guests, why do you come? And after they've been there, what is it that you remember the most? And always at the top of the list was, well, we come for the Disney magic. We come for the famous, Disney stories, whether it's Peter Pan, Mickey Mouse, the Lion King, whatever it is. But when they left, they said the number one thing was the friendliness of the employees. That was what they remembered the most. And, and I think that's true. It's the hospitality industry, right? And in some ways, it feels like that can be a little bit of a lost art these days. And of course, Herschend, just given the location of their signature properties like Silver Dollar City or Dollywood, there's that Southern hospitality kind of mix to it as well, and they just do it really, really well. And they do it because they treat their employees the right way, and they make a point of hearing from them, and they measure their management, they measure their leadership. Their board of directors holds them accountable to those measurements, and they just do it the right way.
Well, we kinda have an intersection a couple of places. One, we have been a theme park family forever. My mother, one year for Christmas, made me a bumper sticker for my truck that said, "Welcome to Wally World." Um, because we would plan our vacations around theme parks.
Yeah.
Everything from Disney, Epcot, Universal, but Dollywood. Ghost Town in the Sky, Santa Claus World in Cherokee, North Carolina. I mean, my children love theme parks. I can remember going to Royal Gorge
Mm,
to the theme park there. I mean, so when we traveled, we did that. When we got to Europe, we found some really unusual European theme parks.
mm.
That many were set themed around classic fairy tales, or we went to a theme park in Thorpe where Ryan went to school that had rides and attractions. We went to one on the Isle of Wight, and so we've always done that. So we've loved as a consumer
Yeah.
the theme park side. Then my career was in the partnership world, and so that's really where you gravitated towards. You took theme parks and the attraction of that fan base to the corporate community, and we're a pioneer in that. Talk a little bit about how that got started and some of the things that you did over the years.
Well, it's really interesting when you look at the themed attractions business, because it's so people focused. Operations are critical, and you know being able to create a safe environment, being able to create a consistent environment, is really at the forefront of successful organizations in the attractions business. And you could say the same thing about the restaurant business or many other, kind of guest service hospitality industries. And operations was not really an area that I was interested in or gifted in. And yet, you know, I like many young people in their careers, they want to advance in their careers, and they want to be successful. And so I really, my career has been very interesting because I go back to those early jobs that I had. And I remember there was a point in my career where I was really just evaluating, which direction am I going to go? And one of the things that I had to be honest with myself about was that, I was a relationship guy and I was kind of a sales guy. That as I thought back in those sales jobs, I just loved that. It gave me energy. It was an area that I think I had some natural giftedness in. But I also had this perception that, salespeople were, sort of low on the totem pole, right? And and so it really wasn't until probably I would say it was like 2010. The chief marketing officer at the time for Hirsch and Family Entertainment came to me and he said, Jason, I want to create a new position. I want to create something that's never really existed with us before. And for lack of a better term, we're just going to call it partnerships. And I think you'd do great at it because you're sort of an outside guy. You're kind of a relationship guy. And this is an area that we just don't really do all that well in. I mean, we're laser focused on, you know, the internal operations. We're laser focused on, serving our guests. But, how do we develop partnership programs that serve both Hershin but also serve our partners? And there were really three areas that he asked me to focus on. One was the what we called the brand alliances. That, unlike a Disney, unlike a Universal Studios, we didn't really have any content that we were affiliated with. I mean, we certainly had our relationship with Dolly Parton, and when we changed what was called Silver Dollar City, Tennessee to Dollywood, it dramatically changed the trajectory of that property. So, go find, I mean, I remember him telling me, go find us the next Dolly. That was sort of my charge number one. And of course that led me to developing relationships with Hollywood and working with studios on different brands ranging from, Nickelodeon to, Veggie Tales to all sorts of different content brands that we could add to the product or to the entertainment that we were delivering to our guests. The second area was what we called cause relationships. The Herschel family is incredibly charitable, have a heart for the communities that they operate in. But we didn't really have one single platform across the whole portfolio. And so I was asked to kind of go figure that out. And then finally was really the sponsorship area. But back in those days, what that really had to do with was, because we had separate operations in different places, we had multiple people going out and developing relationships. And then we'd find out later that we've got the same relationship in two or three different places, activated differently, different deals. And so he said, well, you just kind of try to bring all that together. And by the way, the other thing was we were finding that, our properties were sort of activating these sponsor relationships in all kinds of different ways. And there were paper signs all over the parks, and it was kind of messing things up a little bit. So my job on the sponsorship side originally really wasn't about growing that area. It was really about sort of managing that area. But it was
And
in those.
consistency. I mean, like I'm sure your concession business, you're selling a lot of soft drinks,
Right.
but how are you presenting the soft drinks as an example?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And that was really the first relationship there. And I was part of my partnership story is absolutely Coca-Cola, which probably is, similar to a lot of people's story. I mean, Coke is, it certainly back in those days was the gold standard in the theme park industry of the partner, right? Whether you were doing promotions on cans at retail, or whether you were doing activations that were Coke branded and unique to a property. Beverages and soft drinks were a critical part of the food and beverage program. And so we had and by the way, we at that point in time, we were headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. And being able to live in Atlanta, Georgia, and have a relationship with Coke North America was, I mean, it was like a PhD in partnerships for me. And that's really where I started to learn how to do partnerships and sponsorships, and then we just grew it from there. And I remember, this was probably in the 2014, 2015. We were really laser focused on growing revenue. And so what was a focus of, really managing the partnerships we had, now it was all about growing the partnerships. And this was probably the beginning of sort of the seed of an idea that I had for a partnership organization like our current company, Click. And the biggest reason was because I was a theme park guy. Um, I would always go to the theme park business to get, insights and learn how to do anything. And when I went to the industry to learn how to do sponsorship, I couldn't find it. Disney had a participant program that they were good at, but it was, they're Disney, so it's real different. Six Flags had a very dynamic partnership program, but they had probably 70 or 80 people across the country that were selling and activating, and it was a major, revenue driver. But we weren't gonna build up a staff of 70 or 80 people. And so it was at that point I went, I've got to go outside the industry to really learn how to do that. And that really was when sort of this idea for a partnership company came to be. So.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me about. I would think that we all know about the big boys, Disney, Universal, but there are hundreds of mom and pop theme parks across, America and then around the world. And like you said, they're not financially built to build their own autonomous departments. And so I think you saw an opportunity
Yeah.
to say, I understand the sponsorship business, I understand the partnership business. Let me take it to a broader group.
Yeah. Yeah. How these things go, Rick. They're sort of crawl, walk, run. And one of the things that I had remembered from way back in my early consulting days, because we did a lot of startups, we did a lot of new developments, and always in the revenue line was a line for sponsorship, 100% of the time. And it was based on this theory that sponsorship would be a part of the revenue mix, but never on the expense side were there any dollars to actually, to actually make it happen. And so, I had remembered that when I started the sponsorship group at Hershen, and one of the areas that we really had never developed was outreach. And I was one guy in Atlanta, Georgia, working for a company that had properties sprinkled all over the country. And I remember one time I was up in Cincinnati, our aquarium there, and I met with, at the time, the head of partnerships for the Reds. And, he said, I've got 12 salesmen and I got about 20 activation people. And I thought to myself, I'm in Cincinnati maybe once a year trying to sell sponsorships for our local aquarium. And this guy has 30 some odd people, running around that city 365 days a year. And so, it really wasn't until I met my now business partner, who is one of the best salesperson I've ever known. And he literally started to just sell. He just started to sell against the properties we had. And what we discovered was the market had never heard from us before. And when we went to the market, they said, number one, this is unique. Number two, these are highly engaging environments that have really good audiences, both from a visitation perspective and from a communication perspective. So that, the analytics are there, the valuation is there. And, we started to just drive business. And we realized that, most attraction companies have never really gone to market. And they've never really developed the fundamentals of what it is to have a partnership program. Because it's one thing, as you know, to sell it, but you also have to deliver it. You got to, and you have to develop relationships with these partners. I mean, these are vital relationships that they want to feel the love. And the hospitality side of attractions, I mean, this, I mean, you can sell a golf tournament because everybody wants to take their team to a golf tournament, or you can sell a basketball game or a football game. But people love to go to theme parks too. So we were able to sort of create platforms and programs that were very compelling to the marketplace. So,
Well, using the sports analogy, we're going through an era right now that we're seeing two things happen. One, we're seeing a lot of sports organizations. I'll use the Atlanta Braves as an example.
yeah,
They're really building real estate theme parks.
right.
They're building these multi-entertainment, sport, participatory festival destination types of things. And I'm beginning to see that the colleges are really looking to do that in a unique way. But then we also have these mega events like Olympic Games or this summer's World Cup, where they're building temporary theme parks around stadiums or around city centers or around parks. Talk a little bit about that and some of the things that y'all are doing with that.
Yeah, I'll sort of draw a small comparison. One of our clients who you've known and worked with for years is the Grand Ole Opry. And we were working on some different relationships. One of the categories that they had never really developed was the automotive category. And we started having some really good conversations with the various US manufacturers, and Ford was the one that ultimately we partnered with. And, when you would go to the Grand Ole Opry, you would pass through the plaza area. And, if you were going to the later show, you'd stand in line until the early show cleared out, and you'd spend, you know, 30 minutes, an hour waiting to go in. And there was nothing going on in that plaza. And we said, from an exposure, branding, experiential standpoint, the length of stay opportunity in that plaza area is underutilized. And if we can create, programming that will not only draw the guest earlier, but give them something to do while they're waiting to go into the show, we might have something. And that really led us to the development of a Ford Lounge, which is this fun, kind of bar, restaurant, seating area, highly themed around Ford, very experiential, that they loved. And that became the cornerstone of the activation of that partnership. That's the same thing in the sports world, just what you described, that people want to go to the event, but the event has a halo effect beyond just the actual, timed sporting event or whatever it might be. And, we've been able in the theme park industry to really sort of export ourselves to that, to that market. But on the partnership side, those are areas where they're much more engaging. I mean, we can't compete with the sporting industry because of the cameras that are pointing at the brands that are sponsoring those activities, but we can compete with the length of stay and the memorable engagement. I mean, just to sort of give you a parallel there, Coca-Cola, I probably have negotiated 8 to 10 Coca-Cola partnerships and relationships. And one time I was asking them, why do you sponsor this stuff? I mean, why do you care? I mean, Coca sell more Coca-Cola in a Kroger grocery store down the street from Dollywood in a week than they'll sell at Dollywood. But the memories that are created at Dollywood and the engagement that they have with their product while they're having a lot of fun with their family draws them to that grocery store to buy Coke throughout the rest of the year. So brands are realizing that engagement, that memory, that activity of fun is a valuable place to be. And
Well,
that's what we're trying
well,
to put together.
one of the most underutilized parts of sporting events, I think, especially I spent so much of my career in the collegiate side,
Mhm.
is post game.
Right.
I mean, you got a couple of options. You can sit in traffic for 2 hours,
There you go.
or maybe you go do something outside of the stadium
Yeah.
and have a 30-minute drive instead of a 2-hour drive.
Right.
And what happens is I think people are tired. They the game's over. But that is such a wonderful time to add entertainment value. I think you have a captive audience. They may have tailgated all before the game, but after the game, I think if you had the right programming elements, the right show,
Yep.
they would stick around versus fighting a traffic jam getting out of a parking lot.
100%. That's why I mean, the one that you and I are familiar with, but there's many more examples. The Battery in Atlanta. I mean, you're starting to see those types of developments pop up everywhere. So we're and by the way, those are opportunities. I don't think these are things we ever thought about because we were, the sports industry really wasn't the industry that we were targeting or that we were uniquely gifted in. But what's happening is that we're being approached by a lot of sporting organizations because of those ancillary developments and experiences around them. So
Yeah, because you are building mini theme parks. You're
right.
building a fun experience for people. I will say this, I had a few years ago, I was dealing with an executive at Learfield to bring a traveling tour experience that we were doing for Dollar General to his weekly, fan festival, and he said to me, "We really don't like one-offs." And I
Mm,
said, "You ought to be begging for one-offs." And he said, "Well, why is that?" I said, "Well, if you have 7 home games and your theme park, the show never changes each week, and I brought my family there the first week, why do I come back weeks 2 through 7?" And he said, "Well, I never thought of that." I said, "Well, no joke. You ought to be begging for a different thematic every week just to because you got some people that are there 7 games, your Nissan dealer that's there with the same activation for 7 games, you need something to bring people back so that they see it again, and
right.
and I think
Yeah.
that's what I think people are beginning to find. So I think this intersection of sporting events and theme parks
Right.
is a big, big trend and one that y'all are really well poised to take advantage of.
Well, and you know what else it is too, Rick? And I mean, I mean, we can talk about the experiences, we can talk about the unique memories. But you'll remember this has been a number of years ago when NASCAR was just on explosive growth. They were really targeting women and the families, right? They knew that advertisers would spend money if they could draw in those that broader audience other than just the male viewer, and we have that. I mean, our industry is a family oriented, mom driven industry, and for advertisers, that's a valuable place to be.
Yeah, no question. And, this broadly, this podcast Shaboom is aimed at baby boomers. And then narrowly today, the theme is about fun. And that is the perfect intersection for baby boomers with our grandchildren. What I did with my children, now I am repeating with my grandchildren. And, as a theme park family, I love taking my grandchildren now
Yep.
to theme parks. We went to the State Fair of Iowa last summer,
Oh my gosh.
which is maybe arguably outside of maybe the one in Dallas in Texas, the best
Yeah.
state fair. It's historically a renowned state fair. My 4-year-old grandson still talks about the rides he got to ride and the food he
Right.
got to eat and the time he got to have with Big Daddy. And those are memories that I treasure, and I'm hoping he's going to treasure because I'm not going to be here forever. And there's something about a bond, about riding a theme park ride with your grandchildren that I think is unreplaceable in any other experience.
Yeah. It look, the live entertainment, live sports industry, um, might be one of those industries, and as we'll see what happens moving forward with AI, but you can't replace, those human interactions. They just are irreplaceable. And while we may, I remember an economist with Coca-Cola did a study once on the theme park industry, and literally for over 100 years it has maintained its market share of the GDP, and it's been somewhere in the 3, 4, 5% range, and it's been consistent across that 100-year period. We may not necessarily grow that percentage of GDP, but we're going to maintain it. And look, people are people look for experiences. That's where, I mean, we've got a generation of folks now that experiences are, they're almost more important than home ownership and a few other things. They'll spend a significant amount of their resources to go do things. And we think this is going to bode well for partners. We think it's going to bode well for what we're doing in this time. So,
Well, I
uh,
want to close with one more thought. If you look at Italy, for example, about 40% of its GDP is tourism, international tourism. In America, ours is about 3%. So we have
yeah,
huge growth opportunities. And I don't think we do a great job with it. I really had hoped, and part of it has been administrative changes and personnel changes, but we have this unique intersection right now of World Cup married to America's 250th, married to an Olympic Games coming in Los Angeles in 28. We got the chance to really invite the world to America, and when they're here, what a great way to take advantage of what I call American values is to go to a theme park, an American theme park. If you really wanted to see that, are your clients thinking that way? Are they looking to try to attract more international customers?
yeah, it ebbs and flows. I mean, look, the U.S. experiential market is overpriced. It just is. I mean, I'm taking my family to California this summer for a week. I could take my family to Europe for a month for what it's going to cost me to take them to California for a week. The theme park area is still fairly affordable. Back in the day when Disney did a lot of pricing analysis, they looked actually at the U.S. ski industry to sort of kind of set their pricing, but that ski industry now is outpacing where Disney is. So there's the realization that we've got to get our pricing in order a little bit. I don't know, Rick, if you've tried to buy any tickets to go to a World Cup event, but oh my goodness, I mean it's astronomical,
Yeah.
so I think there's some challenges there, but look, we've got great product. We're a safe environment. I think as we start to get the affordability factor a little bit better in the tourism industry, I think we'll start to see demand. And look, I mean, it's it there's a lot of alternatives. You talk about the Iowa State Fair. You don't have to go to California or Orlando to get a fun family memory. There are a lot of other opportunities, for discovery and for entertainment in other places. So, and I think the consumer looks for those. We're seeing I'd say probably 40%, maybe as much as 50% of our client base now are smaller, less than 500,000 visit attractions. And they're starting to see growth in those attractions. You're starting to see that those types of more regional, local attractions really grow, and I think it's because they're more affordable and they're unique, and they're closer to home. So,
Yeah. Well, you're in a really fun business.
it
I
is
mean,
fun.
you make people happy for a living, and then you're helping those attractions by attracting brands that can draw audiences and bring experiences. And then you're helping those brands by saying, hey, we can help you sample product. We can help you, launch new products. We can help you, promote, gift with purchase opportunities with tickets and discounts and all that. I think it's fascinating what you're doing right now. And I do believe it's going to continue to grow. I think we're going to continue to, and I'm seeing more and more municipalities and states say, what's unique about our state? How do we sell the West or the Northeast or the Midwest? How do we create an experience that's unique? We've seen that forever in Europe, same
Yeah,
size with all these different cultures. We're beginning to kind of promote our cultures, and a lot of the cultures are being promoted through theme parks.
you bet.
And I think it's an exciting time to be in it.
It's very fun.
Thank you, my friend, for being with us today. I know you got a lot going on right now, and I thank you for being a guest on Shaboom.
Pleasure to be with you, buddy. Look forward to seeing you soon again.
Thanks. It's now time for the boom. I'm a big Bob Knight fan, and a lot of people may not remember, but Bob Knight did a commercial several years ago during March Madness for Minute Maid. And it was completely against what everything Bobby Knight was about. Bobby was smiling and happy. He took out one of his players in the commercial and said, Johnny, I took you out of the game because you're not smiling out there. You're not having any fun out there. There's a great song that was recorded by the great Elaine Stritch called Are You Having Any Fun? Recently, Volkswagen had a series of commercials with that. And that song is on our playlist today, too. It's a great song. Are you having any fun? Well, are you? Are you having any fun? At your age, you better be before it's too damn late. And that's the boom. It's now time to get back on the road with Rick. Our generation grew up with the notion of getting your kicks on Route 66. Every baby boomer needs to take a trip on Route 66. Now, that highway doesn't exist anymore. It's been decommissioned because so much of Route 66 today are interstate highways. But it literally starts in downtown Chicago. You can find the sign. Route 66 starts there. And you drive a little bit of Route 66 until it becomes part of an interstate highway. But there are two states that have significant amounts of road, the old mother road of Route 66, Oklahoma and Arizona. Both of those states have wonderful historic things that go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Old motels, great diners, great drive-ins, and a couple of dishes you got to eat on Route 66. If you're in Oklahoma, you want to eat what we call onion smash burgers. Almost every place has smash burgers. Part of it was meat was expensive and in short supply. If you put enough onions in it, you could mix it up, and it worked. They take onions, ground beef, they smash them on a griddle that probably had 1 million hamburgers on it over the years. Serve it with mustard and a pickle. Don't want any ketchup on a smash burger. Mustard and a pickle, great, great dish. And then in Arizona, we've got these great Mexican dishes, classic Mexican dishes on Route 66 in Arizona. Get to Route 66, take a trip, or trips, plural. Get your kicks on Route 66 on the road with Rick. Let's take a walk down memory lane now. George Strait is one of my very favorite artists of all time. I've been able to see him many, many times, including recently at Clemson University. One of my favorite songs of George Strait's a song called All My Exes Live in Texas. And in that song, he talks about remembering the Frio River. Well, I've been to the Frio River. In fact, I've tubed on the Frio River. Great place, a lot of fun. But there's another unique place in Texas that's at the intersection, believe it or not, of two rivers, the Guadalupe River and the Comal River. And this is a theme park called Schlitterbahn. And it's themed after a German town. Obviously, in Texas, in that area, is what we call the Hill Country that was originally settled by Germans. It's near New Braunfels. It's an amazing water park. It's one of the best water parks I've ever seen, with a lot of incredible rides and activities. We've been there a couple of times, taking our kids there, but it's the perfect place now for us to take our grandchildren. It's one of those great, really cool theme parks. You know, revolving rivers, all kinds of water slides. Just a great time. Old school Schlitterbahn on trip down memory lane. So here's today's last word. I had a great friend, the late Dr. Bill Bandy. Bill was the head of the wellness program. He was a kinesiologist by training. And he was the head of what we call the wellness program at Belmont University in Nashville. A lot of people know Belmont because it's probably the premier music school in America for those that want to have a career in country music. Garth Brooks' daughter, one of his daughters, went there. Lots and lots of recording artists in Nashville started at Belmont. Well, Bill ran basically the PE program, the kinesiology program, but what they defined as the wellness program. And Bill died. He was the fittest guy I knew, but he dropped dead of a heart attack after doing a duathlon, where I think he ran 20 miles and biked 100 miles. And he got off his bike, said, "I don't feel good," dropped dead. But Bill Bandy loved life more than anybody else. But he had a great saying about life, and this was his saying: "Well, it's kind of like fun, only different." Ain't that true? And that's our last word for today. It's kind of like fun, only different. We'll see you next week on Shaboom.